let's begin like this. International humanitarian law is different from human rights law. One is international humanitarian law deals only with war and military occupations, while human rights law deals with all times. Also, killing in human rights is illegal. You don't kill. The right to life is maybe the most basic right in human rights.
Yes.
While killing is allowed in international humanitarian law. International humanitarian law says that you can kill combatants, but you need to protect civilians. You can target military sites, but you need to protect civilian sites.
So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. This is Middle East Insights, and today we are there with Professor Neve Gordon talking about a very difficult issue, which is the ICC warrants against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and what is its impact on regional politics. Before we start, I would give a profile of Professor Neve Gordon. He's a professor of human rights law at Queen Mary University of London. And his first book, Israel's Occupation, provided a structural history of Israel's mechanisms of control in West Bank and Gaza Strip. His second book, which he co-authored, The Human Right to Dominate, which was written along with Nicola Perguni, examines how human rights, which are generally conceived as tools for advancing emancipation, can also be used to enhance subjugation and dispossession. Most recently, he wrote, again with Perguni, the first book on the legal and political history of human shields. Human Shields, a history of people in the line of fire, which follows the marginal and controversial figure of the concept of human shield over a period of 150 years in order to interrogate the laws of war and how the ethics of human violence or humane violence is produced. Professor Gordon has also edited 2 volumes, one on torture and the other on marginalized perspective on human rights. He has been a member of different bodies, different institutions like Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton. He has been a visiting scholar at the University of California, Berkeley, at Brown University, University of Michigan, SOAS in London, and he had also been the member of the International State Crime Initiative. He regularly writes for The Guardian, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, Al Jazeera, The Chronicle of Higher Education, London Review of Books. So with this, sir, welcome to our podcast today. And thank you for the privilege of your time. So my first question, sir, to you is that today, Netanyahu is also supposedly appearing for the first time on the corruption cases against him. Is it correct?
Yes.
And what would be the implication of that? What exactly are these corruption cases about?
Each one is different. One is about trying to get control over the media. Another is about receiving different kinds of bribes. Third has to do with, they all have to do with different kinds of bribes and corruptions. that he received or allegedly received from very wealthy people in an effort both to give them favors and in order for him to gain further control. I think he and Modi operate often in very similar ways.
Yes, to be honest, we ourselves had the case of Adani getting sanctioned by US. And then the entire controversy that started over here is whether deep state, American deep state is involved in it. And there's no, it's all completely gibberish and all that rhetoric continued. My next question to you, sir, is that the ICC warrant, it took 6 months, 1 day to be put forward. The chief prosecutor being Karim Khan, who is also in UK. The warrant is against Netanyahu, the previous defense minister Yoav Gallant, and one of the Hamas leaders, Mohammed Deif. So, could you please tell us that how do ICC warrants actually operate? What is the mechanism of it?
So the prosecutor investigates cases where the prosecutor thinks there's egregious crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, could be genocide, and decides whether to submit arrest warrants to what's called the pre-trial chamber. The ICC prosecution has been investigating Israel for years of crimes it has committed in the occupied territories, the West Bank and Gaza Strip. But following October 7th, I think these investigations became much more urgent, and the chief prosecutor submitted arrest warrants for 2 Israeli leaders for carrying out war crimes and crimes against humanity. The major allegations were starvation as a weapon of war, which is a crime against humanity, and the targeting of health care. These terms like war crimes and crimes against humanity. So the law basically provides a whole series of. Let's begin like this. International humanitarian law is different from human rights law. One is international humanitarian law deals only with war and military occupations, while human rights law deals with all times. Also, killing in human rights is illegal. You don't kill. The right to life is maybe the most basic right in human rights.
Yes.
While killing is allowed in international humanitarian law. International humanitarian law says that you can kill combatants, but you need to protect civilians. You can target military sites, but you need to protect civilian sites. Okay? So international law allows violence. What it tries to do, it doesn't say violence is bad like human rights law would say. What it tries to do is not to stop the violence, but to regulate the violence. To say when is the violence legal and when is the violence illegal, while the major principle of international law is the principle of distinction, the distinction between civilians and civilian civilian sites on the one hand, and military sites on the others. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, civilian sites and civilians cannot be targeted. When they are targeted and killed, if the warring party did not take into account other principles, which I will not get into now, then it is a war crime. What is a crime against humanity? A crime against humanity. So a war crime deals with an event. I bombed a hospital. I committed a war crime. Okay?
Yes.
That's not a crime against humanity. That's a war crime. If you carry out illegal actions in a systematic manner, like continuously bombing all the hospitals, it can become crime against humanity. So crimes against humanity always have a systematic nature to them, whereas war crimes can be a single event. Okay? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what Gallant and Netanyahu were blamed of by the ICC was war crimes, but more importantly, crimes against humanity, because starvation is not something that you carry out through an event. It's not as if you close the gate and don't allow humanitarian aid to enter. Single event that starvation happens. Starvation happens due to a series of actions that have to take place, and therefore the crime of starvation is a crime against humanity. Okay?
Yes,
and
sir.
That's what they were accused of. Now, the members of the ICC, there's a distinction. There's two international courts, permanent international courts. One is the International Criminal Court, and one is the International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice has no sword behind it. It has no enforcement mechanism behind it. It provides only advisory opinions. So it recently issued a ruling that Israel's occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip is illegal. Now, that is a ruling that says basically it's not that Israel's settlements in the West Bank are illegal. It's not that its checkpoints are illegal. It's not that its restrictions of movement of Palestinians is illegal, but the whole apparatus, the whole occupation itself is illegal. Okay? But that is an advisory opinion, and we'll discuss why that is important in a second. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, as opposed to the International Court of Justice, where the discussion was about the legality of the occupation, and currently they are discussing whether what Israel's doing in Gaza is genocide. That's the ICJ. The ICC has a sword. By sword, I mean an enforcement mechanism, and it actually demands accountability, and it tries not states, but people, whereas the ICJ is against states. So the ICC, there's 124 signatories to the ICC, member states that are signatories to the Rome Statute. It's part of the Rome Statute, which was created in 1998 and came into force in 2002. 124 members, and everyone that's a member has to abide by it. The ICC operates according to the Rome Statute, and the prosecutor issued arrest warrants. These arrest warrants need to be accepted by the pretrial chamber, where 3 judges say that they accept the arrest warrants, which it took 6 months to accept. We'll discuss that in a moment. But once they did, all the 124 countries that are signatories to the Rome Statute must arrest Gallant or Netanyahu if they are within their territories. So that's the sword. And then arrest them, they transfer them to The Hague, and therefore they have to go on trial for the crimes that the prosecutor submitted, and the prosecutor can, at a later date, add further crimes to their prosecution. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, this is the first time since the court's establishment. If you have a computer in front of you, you can Google ICC and Google the people that were indicted. And you can scroll down the page and you'll see they're all black. They're all people of color. They're all from Africa, or almost all of them. Okay? So it's a court that has been used, except recently, by the powers that be to basically arrest people of color that are indeed war criminals. I'm not saying that they're not war criminals. Most of them are war criminals, or all of them are war criminals. However, the fact that only they arrested, some of my students would call it the African court instead of the International Criminal Court. The court has also issued an arrest warrant to Putin.
Yes.
For what he has done in Ukraine. But what is unique about Netanyahu and Gallant, that this is the first time that the court has issued arrest warrants for Western allies. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
And this has put into question, or there's a considerable attacks against the court because the West doesn't like to be in the pulpit, to be examined by the court. So there's a lot of pressure, and there has been a great deal of pressure on the court not to issue these arrest warrants. But the court also understood that if it doesn't issue the arrest warrants, then the court itself and its legitimacy will be at stake, because everyone with eyes on their head that has been following the news or social media and seen the devastation and the utter destruction in the Gaza Strip knows full well that it is a genocide, okay? Yeah. That what is going on there is crazy. And if the court can't issue because these are white men from an ally, then what is the meaning of this court? So the court understood, I think, that if it doesn't issue the arrest warrants, it's damned. No one will respect it. But on the other hand, it also understood that if it does issue the arrest warrants, it's also damned, because the majority of the money that goes into running the court comes from Western states, and the Western states are very unhappy that it has issued an arrest warrant against one of its allies.
And that is something which even Biden and many members of the US congressmen stated, that they're going to sanction the court.
Yeah.
So we, hopefully, together will find a way to register our displeasure with the ICC, because if they'll do this to Israel, we're next. This group tried to come after our soldiers. Yeah, you can clap all you want to. They tried to come after our soldiers in Afghanistan, but reason prevailed. So at the end of the day here, what I hope to happen is that we level sanctions against the ICC for this outrage to not only help our friends in Israel, but protect ourselves over time. Ms. Secretary, your statement yesterday was excellent. The President's statement was excellent. Senator Schumer's statement on the floor was excellent about the outrage here. They have destroyed the notion of complementarity. They have misled people in the United States Senate about their intention, and they shall and will pay a price. Ms. Secretary, I appreciate what you've said. It is now time for us to act. Thank you.
Can they sanction?
Well, they sanction the people that are involved with the court. So once the United States decides to sanction you, for example, the Indian banks that have relations with the United States, which is practically every bank in India,
yes,
cannot allow you to take money in and out of your bank account. And therefore, your bank account suddenly closes, even in India. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and that's a big deal. So it's not only you can't travel to the United States, blah, 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 as a person, but anyone that does any kind of interaction with you is liable in terms of American law, and that is major. And so suddenly you find yourself that you can't use your credit cards and you can't use your bank machine. And it's a major deal. So it will sanction the prosecutor, it will sanction the judges and all the people that work in the.
And there was also this sudden revelation of some kind of alleged accusation against Karim Khan on sexual demeanor that happened just after the arrest warrants were issued. There was this case that came up against him.
Yes. Now we know that the Mossad, the Israeli secret services, were involved in the court. We know that they tried to stop the previous prosecutor from carrying out an investigation. That is common knowledge, and that has been in the press. Since Karim Khan issued the arrest warrants, two new things happened. One is one of the judges resigned, claiming health issues. And we don't know exactly why the judge resigned, but you can imagine if you're one of the judges in these, you're part of a legal elite, the legal elite, a legal global elite. To be a judge in the ICC, you're part of a legal global elite. Where that elite, the majority of it is Western, right?
Yeah.
Now, there is immense pressure by the Western countries for you to rule against the arrest warrants. I don't know this for a fact. I have no evidence of what I'm going to say, but I don't think it's wild to think that the judge resigned and the health issues were stress issues. The judge was under considerable stress and could not handle the kind of pressures. But I don't know this. Now, regarding the sexual allegations against Karim Khan, we have to be very careful here. Because we cannot say we do not believe the women.
Yeah.
My beginning point is I believe the woman.
Yeah.
When she says she was in some way sexually harassed or assaulted or whatever. You have to begin with believing the woman, always.
Yeah.
So I believe her.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Now, the fact that he sexually, there's no, in the claims, it's not about physical conduct, but it is sexual harassment, from what I understand. I think that happened. Now, whether the Israeli Secret Service are using that against Khan, I also think they're using it against Khan. But I think he probably did.
Yeah, two things can be true at the same time. As so many, and multiple things can be true at the same time as we move forward and see what is happening.
And we have to be careful when our allies are blamed of sexual harassment. We cannot brush it away, even though they're our allies.
Yeah.
We are against sexual harassment, full stop, period, regardless of who is carrying it out.
Yes. Coming to the next question, sir. This is one of the first, like yesterday, December 9th was 76th anniversary of preventing genocide. And
what?
The prevention of genocide. December 9th is the 76th anniversary for prevention of genocide and, creating awareness about it. What I'm not and I'm coming from a place of ignorance. Since October 7, what happened to the 1,200, 1,400 innocent Israelis by the attack of Hamas? The 100 plus hostages who are still not back, and more than 44,000 Gazans injured, many in West Bank also injured. what I'm not able
injured, killed.
Killed and injured.
No, 44,000 killed.
In Gaza.
And 100,000 injured. There's thousands and thousands of children, including thousands, probably well over 1,000 babies were killed.
Yeah. So what I'm not able to understand, sir, is that all of it is posted regularly, and through social media we are able to get access of what is happening, even though many social media networks are censoring information. They block the accounts, they deactivate the accounts. It happened with me also. My question is that why did it take 6 months when all the evidence is being televised?
Between the time Khan submitted the arrest warrants and the court issued the arrests?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah.
It took a lot of time because first there was an appeal by the UK government about the jurisdiction of the court, which after the elections in the UK, the UK basically withdrew the appeal.
Okay.
But that created, the minute the court allowed the appeal to come in, another 20 or 30 actors submitted appeals about jurisdiction, and about 40 actors submitted responses to those appeals. So you had about 60 interventions with the court asking it to either annul itself from making a decision based on jurisdiction, and 40 others saying, no, it has jurisdiction. Later, Israel submitted appeals based on complementarity. Do you know what complementarity is?
No, sir.
Complementarity is the idea in international law that when a state has a robust legal system that can investigate and try its own people for alleged war crimes, crimes against humanity, and other violations, then the international legal system should not and cannot try these people. Israel made the claim that it has a robust legal system that can try Gallant and Netanyahu. However, Israel has not even begun investigation of these two people, and in its history, it has never investigated its leaders for such violations. And so that appeal was also dismissed by the court. And then you had the judge that I mentioned before that resigned, and you had to get another judge, and the other judge had to read all the information, etc., 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 and it took 6 months to issue the arrest warrants. So it's these kind of legal requirements that have to, the wheels of justice are often, if they turn, they always turn very slow. I have never seen a case where the wheels of justice turn fast.
So, sir, apart from what I also did not understand, that I was expecting US, the way it reacted. Then France, Netherlands also started, they used the word immunity. Once France was involved in the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire.
So the U.S. is not a signatory of the Rome Statute, and it has no obligations towards that. So that's a different question altogether. Israel itself is not a signatory of the Rome Statute, and so there is no obligations upon them. The reason that the ICC even took the Palestinian case is because the Palestinians are a member of the Rome Statute, and they said their rights are being violated. The states that are obliged by the arrest warrants are the 124 countries, which is the majority of countries in the world, of course, and they are obliged. And the question is, there was a case before that a state leader, meaning Netanyahu and not Gallant, can receive immunity under certain conditions, so long as they are state leaders.
Okay.
And after that, the immunity no longer holds. However, from what I understand, the cases are not applicable to Netanyahu, and he has no immunity even while serving office.
Okay. So why did Hungary out of the sudden, Hungary said that Netanyahu can come to our country, we are not going to arrest him. What was the need of this kind of symbolism?
Well, Orban in Hungary, Modi and Netanyahu, they're all the same breed. They are people that do not respect liberal democracy and basically are leading to what I would call the fascistization of their countries. Each one is very different. Israel is implicated in settler colonialism, while Hungary isn't, and of course,
yeah.
But we are now in a crisis of liberal democracy. We saw the elections in the United States. We see Netanyahu, we see Modi, we see Orban, and we see the right wing gaining power in many European countries. And one of the symbols of liberal democracies is the international legal order and the ICC. And one of the desires of some of these leaders is to dismantle the international legal order that was created post-World War II.
Yeah.
So if the court issues an arrest warrant and no country is willing to arrest Gallant and Netanyahu, then there's no point in having the ICC, right?
Exactly.
The whole point is that that what it says needs to be followed through. Orban tried to challenge the International Criminal Court. He would like probably to see it dismantled, and therefore said, I will not arrest Netanyahu if he comes in. However, we have to keep in mind that, let's say Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, decides he does not want to arrest Netanyahu, and Netanyahu lands in the UK. I am sure that human rights organizations here in the UK will submit an appeal to the Supreme Court to issue an arrest warrant and an injunction, and I'm fairly positive the Supreme Court, which is invested in the international legal order, will issue such an arrest warrant against the decision of the Prime Minister. So in liberal democracies, the Prime Minister is not above the law. The Prime Minister cannot make decisions that are illegal and that are against the constitution of the country. And so in countries like the UK, France, Germany, regardless of what the leaders will say, I think if Netanyahu landed in their borders, he will be arrested.
Okay. And sir, this is the next question is from in 2016, through Jordan, I was able to go to West Bank. And I went to Jericho, Nablus, Bethlehem, East Jerusalem, and most of the other area A, B, C, all the areas of West Bank. What apart from the checkpoints, there was, and obviously the settlers that we did not have access to, I realized that on a daily level, Palestinians had no communication with Israelis. apart from the checkpoints and surveillance and many other things.
And the violent settlers.
And the violence. And the settler violence has even grown worse in West Bank. Most of it is not documented. So my question is that when you were in Israel, like in a as a lay person, what was your frequency of interacting with any Palestinian who was working, an Israeli Arab or a Palestinian who was working within, say, Haifa or Ashdod or Tel Aviv? Were you able to interact like without?
No, you have to make a distinction. There's Palestinians that are citizens of Israel and they live in the pre-1967 borders. And there's Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip that are stateless and live in the occupied territories.
Yeah.
Personally, I had interactions with both because I was among the founders of a Jewish Palestinian school inside Israel where half the children and half the parents were Palestinian citizens of Israel and half were Jews. In my workplace, there were Palestinian citizens of Israel, etc., in the stores, in the hospital. I think 50% of the younger doctors in Israel are Palestinians, 50% or over of the nurses are Palestinian citizens of Israel. When you go to the bank, when you go to the supermarket, you always meet. And I have many friends that are Palestinian citizens of Israel. But as someone that also went regularly to the West Bank for many, many years, I also have friends in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and I have interactions with them. But I am an outlier. I am not a resemblance of Israeli Jews. I am an activist, anti-colonial activist, and therefore I do have such relationships. Most Jews, Jewish Israelis, as you said, their only interaction with Palestinians in the occupied territories are at checkpoints or through the barrel of a gun, or through settler violence, while the people in Tel Aviv will not have any interactions with Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Moreover, the Gaza Strip itself has been locked down for 17 years before October 7th. Palestinians could not exit, and so hardly anyone had any contact with Palestinians. Gaza. While Palestinian citizens of Israel are part of the landscape of Israel, but most Israeli Jews do not have Palestinian friends and do not interact with Palestinians except on the basis of kind of transactions in the store or in the hospital or in the bank or wherever. So it's not about friendship, it's not about breaking bread together. And in order to create a meaningful relationship with other people, I think you need to break bread together. You need to. And so I think it is a very segregated societies. There's over 2 million school children in Israel. I think 1,500 of them study in non-segregated schools. So most Israeli children will study, if they're Jewish, in a Jewish school, if they're Palestinian, in a Palestinian school. And they will not meet until they're adults and enter the workforce. So, or if they're Jews and go to the military, they'll meet Palestinians while they're wearing their uniforms. And the segregation is primarily not legal segregation, but geographical segregation. There's Jewish towns, there's Jewish villages, there's Jewish cities, and there's Palestinian towns, villages, and so forth. And that's why they don't.
So in the process of your institution building, how was the funding? Like a lot of Palestinian schools do not get funding by the Israeli government.
No.
Is it wrong?
No, that's wrong.
Okay.
They get funding. They might get a bit less, but they get funding. The schools inside the pre-1967 border get funding from their public schools, yeah.
Okay. And over the period of time after October 7, for you as an activist, how has the discourse changed for you at a personal level? How difficult is it for you to reach out to people? How much is the surveillance on you, on whom you interact with and whom you don't?
Surveillance on me, I don't know. You have to ask.
Mossad. But how has it changed for you?
I think the discourse in Israel has shrunk considerably for months and months and months calling for a ceasefire. Just calling for a ceasefire was considered treason. Any kind of statement that expressed empathy with the suffering of the Palestinian was considered anti-Israeli. So I'm not even talking about criticism.
Okay.
When I talk about criticism, it's crazy, but I'm just talking about expressing empathy for the death of thousands of children, expressing empathy for the wounded and sick that are in the hospital while it is bombed, expressing empathy while 85% of the schools are destroyed and all the universities are destroyed. That was not allowed. Calling for a ceasefire, for an end of violence, was not allowed. Till today, expressing empathy with the Palestinians can lead you in trouble. Definitely calling what is going on a genocide can lead you into trouble. No one official or in a position of power has said that. So the discourse is very, very limited now, and mobilized to reinforce Israel's stance that it is, despite the genocidal violence that it is carrying out in the Gaza Strip, the victim in all of this. So Israel is the perpetual victim, and nothing it can do can change that.
So when you say all of this, have you been called terms like self-hating Jew or anti-Semite?
Yeah.
Irrespective of the fact that you're not there in the territory, and irrespective of the fact that you cannot be anti-Semite if you criticize Zionism.
Well, if I was there, I'd be in trouble.
Yeah.
Much more than, yeah. I don't think I could say what I've been saying. And they call me an anti-Semite because they have conflated the criticism of Israel with criticism of the Jew. And it's a way of stopping any kind of criticism against Israel.
Sir, thank you so much for the privilege of your time.